And before we start our program, I'd like to recognize several people. First, I'd like to recognize the Board of Commissioners of South Broward Hospital District, Obel Florido, our chairman, Jose Balsuto, our vice chair, Laura Rabin Miller, secretary treasurer, one of our newer board members, Ken Barnett, the dean of the board that's been on longer than all of our members, Albert Jones. The next two are brand new board members, Doug Harrison and Vic Narang. Also, I'd like to introduce the chair of the Memorial and Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital Foundation Board of Directors, Mitchell Eisenberg. President of Nova Southeastern University, George Hanbury. Other special guests, we have Joe's granddaughters who saw both of their kids. You saw all four of your children on the video, and now I understand Vanessa's married. So we can just, anyway, they're here from California. Kathy DiMaggio Stein and Paula DiMaggio Hamra. I want to give a special thanks to this next individual. This individual helped make the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital reality, and that's a Mr. Morris Engelberg. Mr. Engelberg. Morris was Joe's friend and attorney, and without him, we would not have the name of the Memorial of the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital. Thank you, Morris. Also, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors tonight, especially recognize our major sponsor. First and foremost, our presenting sponsor, John Carlisle, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Sheridan Healthcare. Other sponsors, Team Health, Radiology Associates of Hollywood, the Batchelor Foundation, Jim Farrar, Grace Lambert, Stearns Weaver, A&F Group, Calvin Giordano and Associates, Dr. Pierre, Education and Training Center, and Jackson Lewis. Now it's my pleasure to turn over the program over to the MC for the evening. Having watched her on television, outstanding sports reporter for many years, I feel like I know her personally, one of the most recognized reporters in the history of sports, Leslie Visser. Let me just read a little bit of bio about Leslie. Leslie Visser, the most acclaimed female sportscaster of all time. She is the first and only woman enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, voted #1 female sportscaster of all time by the American Sportscaster Association. As a reporter for CBS for more than 25 years, she has broadcast everything from the NFL to the Olympics to the NBA Finals and the NCAA Final Four, the World Series, the Super Bowl, Wimbledon, the U.S. Open, World Figure Skating, and the World Skiing Champion. Leslie Visser.
God, no wonder I'm exhausted. What a privilege to be here. By the way, you guys, I wrote this and I wrote it bigger so that I wouldn't have to use my glasses, but remember Meryl Streep at the Academy Awards? She put them on anyway, so too bad. Frank, your vision and your leadership has been legendary, and we thank you. One more round of applause, please, for Frank Stafford, the great Frank Stafford. I think this award tonight, we pass the baton from one icon to another. Both President Bill Clinton and Joe DiMaggio, of course, were dedicated to service and to leadership, and it is a privilege for me to be your MC. I had the privilege, Morris, wherever you were there, the keeper of the flame, I had the privilege of knowing Joe DiMaggio a little bit, and I will tell you, as a child of the Red Sox, it was amazing to have grown up, you know, Ted Williams was our guy, and Ted Williams once said the greatest all-around player he ever saw was Joe DiMaggio. So that's quite a statement. I remember one player saying to me, we have so many Hall of Fame baseball players here who will know much more than I do about Joe DiMaggio, but I remember one former player saying to me that when you were at the plate, the only thing that you could do when you looked out there and you saw Joe DiMaggio, the only thing you could do was say, "Please, Lord, let me hit him where he ain't." He was, of course, the Yankee Clipper. As Frank said, we're celebrating the 100 years after his birth, and thanks so much to the hospital and to what Joe did for our community and for children. And if you would now join me, and we're going to watch a video, a personal story from the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital.
Welcome to the new Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital. Let me show you what I like best.
Let me show you what I like best.
No, please. Let me show you what I like best.
No, really, let me show you what I like best. The Family Resource Center is what I like the most at Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital. This is the living room of the hospital. It was designed by a bunch of past patients that decided that they wanted to tell us what they wanted to see at the hospital.
This is what I love the most about the new Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital.
This is what I like the most.
What I like the most are the operating rooms because they're state of the art.
This is what I like the most.
This pirate-themed CT scanner is what I like best. This scanner with its decoration is the first of its kind in South Florida. When kids come here, they feel comfortable.
Whoa!
The inpatient rooms are what I like the most about the new Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital. There's plenty of room for me to work, and there's plenty of room for the family.
This is what I like the best of the new Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital.
What we all agree on
Is that we all love
We love the new Joe DiMaggio.
Joe DiMaggio.
The new Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital. We all love the new hospital.
Oh, that's beautiful. You know, thank you all for coming, because the one thing we all know is that dollars equal research, which equals a cure. And I would like now to introduce a patient with a personal story. Please welcome C.J. George. Hello, C.J.
Now let me tell you what I like best about Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital. But it might just surprise you because I can't fit it into a video presentation or take you to it on a hospital tour. You see, Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital not only saved my life, but my experience there changed my life. I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer when I was 9 years old. I entered treatment a terrified young boy. I think all kids are scared growing up, but me maybe a little bit more than most. Because you see, I was that kid who wouldn't want to walk on stage to receive his certificate at the end of a school year or talk in front of a large group of people. I know it's funny, but the reason why I stand here today, a healthy and confident young man, is because of the people at Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital. They not only healed me of cancer, they inspired me and encouraged me as a person. A few months into treatment, someone from the hospital asked me to give an interview and share my story. Immediately, I was scared, and I just wanted to say no and walk away. But she believed in me and encouraged me to try. I had already faced my fear of needles, IVs, spinal taps, swallowing pills, endless scans, and surgery by this point, so why not just try a news reporter? I mean, how bad could it be? But honestly, I think I was more scared for this than all of the treatments I'd been through so far. But I knew it was important that people knew what kids like me were going through and that we had found a safe and loving place to heal at Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital. That one interview led to dozens of others, and every time it was because someone at the hospital believed in me and encouraged me to try. It even led me all the way to Capitol Hill twice to share my story. I think a special guest here tonight may have been there a few times as well. During one of those early interviews, when I was still very sick, someone came up to me and told me that I was their hero. This caught me really off guard. Me, a hero, for getting cancer and for fighting for my life against a disease that I didn't even want? That's a hero? Well, no, not to me. To me, a hero is someone who fights for others, even when they don't have to. My heroes are sitting in this room. I am looking at the faces of over 1,000 heroes right now. I would not be here without you. That amazing hospital would not be there without you. That video you just saw of all those favorite places would not be there without you. You are what I love best about Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital, the people in the community who made it possible. Thank you for helping support a place that saved my life, but for also creating a place that changed my life. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful. Just beautiful, CJ. I think your family just got a lot bigger, CJ. You must be very proud. That was just terrific. Thank you, CJ. As CJ mentioned, a night like tonight doesn't happen without the help and thanks of so many people, so many of you included. I'd love personally to thank Connie Cooper-Smith and Fudge Brown and Harvey Green, Jackie from the hospital, all the people, of course, the great Joe Riley who made this evening happen. I would love, yeah, that's really, Joe Riley cannot be thanked enough for this evening. But it also gives me great pleasure to introduce some people who gave up their time and came quite some distances. Our first guest came from London, you all know him. He's an NBA legend, a fellow Hoya from Georgetown along with our president, and he came from London, one of the great humanitarians of the world. Please welcome Dikembe Mutombo. Known as the Hawk, 21 years in the major leagues, of course, the Hall of Famer, Andre Dawson. This man was Rookie of the Year, World Series champion, of course, the Hall of Famer, Orlando Cepeda. This righty spent his whole career with the Baltimore Orioles. Of course, he famously beat Sandy Koufax in the World Series. Please welcome the great Jim Palmer. This man was part of the great Big Red Machine, the former manager of the Marlins, still with them, Hall of Famer Tony Perez. And finally, known as Mr. Marlin, has given so much time to the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital, just one of the great men in the history of this world, left fielder, first baseman. Please welcome Jeff Conine. Thank you, gentlemen. I don't know if everyone's posing for a picture. 'Cause I'm not sure of that, but if not, please wait. Okay, we'll take my old World Series broadcaster pal. It does now give me great pleasure to introduce a man. Oh, you're all okay. Gentlemen, thank you, gentlemen, by the way. How about that for a collection, huh? Woo! I chased all those guys around for interviews. I hope you remember I was good to you guys at the time. It does now give me enormous pleasure to introduce a man who not only won an Academy Award, but he was President Clinton's butler. That's a pretty good career resume right there. Of course you know, not really. Forrest Whitaker did win an Oscar for his great work as Idi Amin, and of course he is the talk of the town for his fantastic work in The Butler. Please welcome the great Forrest Whitaker.
I'd like to thank the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital, Joe and Trudy Riley, for inviting me to be able to be here tonight to pay this tribute to a true icon and a global leader. I remember the first time that I met Bill Clinton. It was at the White House, and I was in line to shake the president's hand. And I remember when I shook his hand, he grabbed my arms and he looked in my eyes, and he started to tell me about myself. He started to tell me about the work that I'd done and about the films that he'd seen that I'd done. And I couldn't understand how he could know so much about me. And I looked deeply in his eyes and I could see this twinkle that showed this amazing intelligence that rested inside of him. And I was fascinated by that meeting. I was amazed that it was the President of the United States who had just taken the country out of this major economic slump and given hope back to the country. And he was willing to give this energy to me. And years later, after he left the White House, and I would witness the same thing in a different way. I mean, he and I, we were talking about jazz. And we're taking a walk. And he engaged the doorman in the conversation. And the three of us, we sit there talking for about 30, 40 minutes. This is at the Clinton Global Initiative, where he has been able to rise even higher in the presidency in his mission to help humanity. And he created a place where people can work together for a common good for the planet, aggregating them together to make a difference. And knowing what a man of compassion Bill Clinton is, how much he cares about his fellow man, it's no surprise to me how much he cares about the tremendous work that the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital does for children all around the world. Children like Claire, whose parents learned just before she was born that she had a severe heart defect and require a complex surgery before her first birthday. He cares about that. President Clinton is a man with a genuine need to connect and a genuine need to understand, and in some ways a genuine need to heal. I need to heal the circumstance, I need to heal a nation, I need to heal a climate, I need to heal a sickness in someone's body. I need to heal pain in someone's heart. And he's become an icon for that. And how do you define an icon? Well, so I looked in the dictionary and it said it represented something that was a symbol of something. And then there was another definition that said that it was a work of art. What is that thing that you call Bill Clinton, that symbol that he stands for? That thing that he is, that work of art that's most sacred. He's a man that understands the power of now, the urgency of the moment, the need to move the planet forward, to keep us citizens healthy, to find prosperity, to execute stability, to bring about peace. And Martin Luther King Jr. said in one of Bill Clinton's favorite speeches, "We've come to that hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism." And he's taken this motto and recognize that if we want to make the world a better place, we have to begin doing it now. We have to begin addressing the urgency of ending conflict, the urgency of addressing climate change, the urgency of healing our fellow man. President Clinton has acted with the same sense of urgency that the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital shows through its mantra, that no sick child is ever turned away. So I understand why you would want to give the Joe DiMaggio Icon Award to President Clinton. So what does this icon stand for? A man who, in the words of Martin Luther King, is hewed out of a mountain of despair, a stone of hope. So what does this icon stand for? A seed of hope that was planted when this icon was born in Hope, Arkansas. So what does this icon stand for? The man whose youth was spawned from the thermal springs of Hot Springs, Arkansas. So what does this icon stand for? The man who studied law in the hallowed halls of Yale, the man who would be father, the man who would be husband to the Secretary of State of the United States of America, the man who would be governor, the man who would be president, the man who would found the most impactful nonprofit in the world. What does this icon stand for? A man who pushes to move forward humanity, fighting to awaken you to the climate that changes right before our eyes, fighting to end hunger, fighting to end malaria, fighting to bring training to people in Colombia, to advance agriculture in parts of the world, fighting to create health, fighting to live up to the motto of his initiative, which is to aid mankind. So how do we define an icon? An icon, a religious work of art. What does this icon stand for? For me, it stands for someone who walks with grace. I was leaving the Lincoln Memorial on the 50th anniversary in March in Washington, on the March on Washington. And President Clinton said to me, he said, let's take a walk. And so we walked, we talked. And I remember thinking that I felt surrounded by this space. We had entered this transcendent space, this place, and I realized this place that we were in, that's where the icons live. They live in that space. It's a piece of grace that you get from the deeds that you've done. It's a piece of grace that you've been given from God above. And I hope that we all are able to earn just a little bit of that grace through our deeds and are allowed to walk in a space as sacred as the one that he lives in. So, who is this icon? This icon is President Bill Clinton. And it's my great honor to present him with the inaugural Joe DiMaggio Icon Award. Send me a copy of that. I was so excited about your comments.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Let's give Forrest another round of applause. I told him I was back there looking at him on the monitor, and I got so choked up I was afraid I wouldn't make it out here. So help me, I had no role in writing that. But I think he would be surprised at how many people could carry it on a quite intelligent conversation with him about playing Idi Amin and the great jazz saxophonist Charlie Parker and a White House butler. I've known White House butlers, and I've listened to virtually every recording Charlie Parker ever made. I missed old Idi Amin. but I had an idea of what a dictator was like. I thank you. I want to thank Frank Sacco, John Carlisle, Leslie Visser, unbelievable. She could make someone who wouldn't get out of bed in the morning love sports. So I thank them all. I thank you for inviting me here today. I came for two reasons. Somebody asked me before I came out here, said, I kind of thought you'd be in Davos with all those bigwigs instead of here. And I said, well, I might have gone. I miss it every 2 or 3 years, but I came here because first I believe in the mission of this hospital. And I have for a long time. When I was governor in Arkansas, I got the legislature to appropriate enough money to give us the very first tertiary care children's nursery we ever had, and we started saving kids' lives that were born weighing a pound or less, something we now sort of take for granted. But, you know, 35 years ago it was a big deal. And Hillary started chairing the annual telethon that we used to have every year for children's hospitals. You remember that? And every state had a chair, and by the time we left, our little state had the 7th biggest children's hospital in the United States. Partly because we weren't big enough to have more than one. And I came because of my friend Joe Riley. Joe Riley, he knows I'm a sports nut, and I talk to him about baseball all the time, and he wants me never to forget every good thing Joe DiMaggio ever did. And he's favored me with a lot of the memorabilia that still comes out of the foundation. And Hillary and I were talking about it because we both had the honor of meeting Joe before he passed away in completely different circumstances. But when I was a young governor, I was defeated in 1980 for re-election. And everybody thought my career was over, everybody including me. But I had been invited. I went out of office in January of 1981. And I had been invited. It was a big year for the Republicans, 1980. That's the year President Reagan won, and we'd had the hostages in Iran, and a lot of you remember it was horrible. Its conditions. And in my native state, we had the worst drought in 50 years, which is pretty tough on a state that gets 40% of its income from agriculture. And then, before they were dismantled, we had a Titan missile blow up in its silo, sending a nuclear warhead into a cow pasture. Terrifying the whole state. So God just didn't want me to win that contest. You know that great story about the guy that's walking along the edge of Grand Canyon and he slips off? He's hurtling to certain death, and he reaches out and grabs a little sprig into the side of the canyon, and he's holding on. He takes a deep breath. He thinks he's safe, and all of a sudden the roots start giving way, and he said, God, why me? I am a good person. I'm a good family person. I'm a good husband. I'm a good father. I work like crazy. I never cheat on my taxes. I give money to charity. Why me? And this thunderous voice comes out of the sky and says, son, there's just something about you I don't like. Well, anyway, that's kind of the way I felt in 1980. But I had been previously invited to come address the Democratic Convention in 81 in Florida. And then I came again in 83, and I came again in 87. So by the time I ran for president, it really wasn't a fair fight. But I met Joe Riley. And when I was running for president, he just took pictures of me every political event he could. And then when I left the White House, and whenever I came to Florida when I was president, he did. And then when I left the White House, he kept doing it. And then he went places to take pictures. I didn't have a photographer anymore. And he would never take any pay, he would never take anything. And in these over 30 years, we've been friends. He has never asked me to do a single solitary thing, not even once, except come here for his beloved hospital. So I'm also here for that. He is a good man, and he loves it. And I just want to say a few things about why these children's hospitals are so important. Pennsylvania, for years, has been the only state to do what we're now trying to do nationwide. They will publish every year the results of major procedures and care achieved by hospitals all across the state and the costs. And they find every year the same thing, that the price of a given procedure or service bears almost no relationship to what results you achieve. But the most important thing that predicts a good outcome is how many times you do it. And now that we're beginning to do this all over America, we're finding that, and it's going to have enormous ramifications over the next 10 years, both in improving the quality and helping us to hold down the rising costs of health care. That's pretty important for little kids starting out in life. That's why these children's hospitals are so important. Kids are different from grown-ups. When I got into trying to solve the problem of poor countries with huge numbers of people on AIDS who had AIDS who couldn't get medicine, and we were able to drive the price of the generic drugs down from $500 a person a year, which is not much in America, but if you live in a country with a per capita income of under $1 a day, that's a lot of money and no tax base. We got the price of the adult medicine from $500 to $190 to $160 to $140, eventually to about $90. And then there was the children's medicine, which cost less to prepare, but there were so many fewer kids doing it, and the whole biochemistry of the kids was different. And they had to have nutritional supplements or they couldn't absorb the medicine and retain it long enough to get its benefits. Eventually, we got it down to $60 a year. But in this long, winding process, I learned all over again that children are different. Special efforts have to be made, but astonishing numbers of them can be saved. And I think the network of children's hospitals is really important now. I was at St. Jude's not very long ago. About a year and a half ago, the director asked me to come down because he had helped me in our struggle to sequence the human genome. You know, when I was taking elementary biology and chemistry, we all thought the gene was our smallest unit in our body, and it turns out we got 3.6 billion genomes in our body. And there was a big race to finish it. I spent $3 billion of your money to do that. Not fashionable to say that anymore, but I did. And it would have cost us a lot more if there hadn't been a big international effort to work together on it. But we finished in 2000. Last year, an independent economic analysis said that our country had received, in terms of longer lives, greater productivity, and just new biochemical companies starting up, $176 billion worth of economic benefits on that $3 billion investment in just 12 years. Going up. Now, what's the relevance of that? St. Jude has the size to do a lot of this research. So he was telling me all this, and he said, I know you're a numbers guy, but he said, I want to show you something. He took me to see a young boy who had a relatively rare but still often encountered if you run a children's hospital, kind of brain cancer. And he said, you know, for years we've had a drug that cures this cancer, except when it doesn't, in which case it's fatal. Not only to cancer, but the drug makes it worse. He said, because we can sequence the human genome, we were able to take kids where the medicine was working and where it wasn't and see what the variance was. And then almost by an act of God, we discovered that if you cut the recommended dosage in half and give that to the 20% in the minority, they all got well too. So we went from a tragic situation, which every time they gave these kids the medicine, they were holding, you know, crossing their fingers that it would be a survival instead of a more rapid demise, to a point where if you get people young enough now, there's virtually 100% survivability. This is a great thing. This whole thing would not have happened. And immediately, all these results were given to every children's hospital in America and any children's hospital in the world that can log on to the internet. None of this would happen if it weren't for people like you in communities all over this country building these children's hospitals where specialists who want to deal with what is unique and precious and important about our children were doing this work. And it could not be done just by public funds alone. You cannot have a policy that says we will turn no one away if they don't have a nickel to their names just on public policy alone. Now, for the states that participate in this Medicaid expansion, it'll help some. But there will always be gaps in the social fabric. And there will always be needs, because the more you can do, the more you have to do. Don't you find that in your own life? Whenever you can do something you didn't know you could do before, to make something good happen, you feel that you have to do it. That's the way all these people who work in your children's hospital feel. And so I am honored to be here tonight. I hope that my coming helps you raise a little more money. I can say that, you know, I'm not running for anything anymore. It's supposed to be sort of unfashionable, but I'm frankly grateful that people who've enjoyed some success in their lives are willing to share some of it with less fortunate people in institutions like this. And I think it's a noble thing. I think it is a noble thing to do this. And I just want to, all of you probably know this already, but the sheer collective magnitude of good that the children's hospitals in this country do is breathtaking. In a few days, I'm going to indulge in another one of my obsessions. I'm going to the Super Bowl. And normally I wouldn't, because at my age I don't like to be that cold, and we're hosting it in New York this year. But yeah, if he throws for 400 yards again, he'll win. But anyway, I normally don't go, but I got invited because the Players Association has been a partner of our foundation on some of our health initiatives. And because they gave a prize this year of a free trip to the Super Bowl to a young football player who had overcome the biggest obstacles. And they interviewed people in all states. And the winner was a young man who struggled with repeated recurrences of childhood cancer and never gave up his dream of being a football player, and is now a starter and a star on the football team in the little town in Arkansas where I was born. And I had nothing to do with it, but they called me and they said, you know, you've helped us. And this young guy, and they told me the story, and I mean, I was just all choked up, and they said, so you need to come here and meet this young guy and watch the Super Bowl. And normally I hate to sit in those fancy, what do you call them, skyboxes or whatever. I like to be out in the crowd with the folks, but I'm cold. I'm going to the skybox. And I'm going to sit with that young man. But we're laughing, but I want you to be serious about this. When I think of the work that we could do at children's hospitals, if all of us took better care of ourselves and didn't impose enormous costs on the system. About 70% of our healthcare costs every year come from chronic diseases that are largely preventable or avoidable, in some cases reversible, because of decisions we make. And I spend lots of time on that. We have a program called the Alliance for a Healthier Generation designed to try to reverse the tide of childhood obesity. We work in 21,000 schools with over 12 million kids to try to help them be more active. I worked on trying to improve the quality of the school lunch meals. And here's another charitable good deed that almost no American knows. We made agreements with the largest soft drinks and fruit juice. They have a lot of sugar, processed fruit juice. We worked with all these folks to reach a voluntary agreement that they would together reduce the number of calories they were shipping to the schools in drinks to be served in vending machines or cafeterias. Now, when we started this, the evidence was that a staggering number of these overweight kids got half of their calories every day just from the drinks they were consuming at school. Last year, an independent body having no connection with me or the soft drink industry said that there had been a 90% reduction in the total volume of calories being shipped to schools in drinks over the last 4 years without a tax or a regulation or anything, just because we gave these folks another way to make a profit without hurting kids. There are things we can do, and I'm bringing this up to you now because, well, I'm in South Florida. Miami-Dade was the first county-wide school system to have all its schools join our alliance. And Jacksonville is one of 4 places in America where we're now trying to do the same thing for adults, for everybody in the community. We cannot keep bleeding our limited health resources dry, taking away money that the children in these children's hospitals need from completely avoidable problems that we either don't have the knowledge or discipline, or we don't think we have the money, in the case of low-income working people who hadn't had a raise in a decade and have got kids at home, to avoid. It is nuts for us to be spending 70% of our money on completely avoidable conditions. And when you think of all the miracles that have been wrought by this children's hospital, imagine what they could do if we just reduced that 70% just to 60% and redirected the money to things that are not avoidable, not preventable. So that's the only serious policy recommendation I'm going to make to you tonight. It's a personal one. Every year, about 20% of us claim about 80% of the medical expenses in America. But it's a rotating 20%. And 10 years ago, for the first time in my life, I became part of that 20% when I had to have open heart surgery, a quadruple heart bypass. And I had to have it because even when I was running 25 miles a week and thought I was fit, I was slowly eating my way to an early demise. And I won't go through all that, but the biology of it, I'm just saying it struck me when I got out of the hospital and the American Heart Association asked me to help them. I said, okay, but I don't want to do any public service campaigns. I want us to organize a systematic effort to save children's lives. This childhood obesity problem is the #1 public health problem in America. A few years ago, the Medical Society said we had to stop calling type 2 diabetes adult onset diabetes. I read that and then I checked, and within the last year, we had a 9-year-old girl in Harlem within a mile of my office, living within a mile of my office with type 2 diabetes, the kind you get from living, not the kind you're born with. So that's the other thing I want to say. Keep giving money to the Children's Hospital. Keep supporting them. Tell people they're working miracles. If we had everybody sharing all the impact of the latest discoveries and how they could help people in the way that the network of children's hospitals around this country share that information. We could cut the unemployment rate 2 or 3%, 10 times faster. We could figure out a lot of, these people are trying to save children's lives. So every time there's a big scientific breakthrough, it'll be blasted over the internet faster than you can blink. And believe it or not, there are now people treating children in Africa and remote countries in Asia and Latin America that never would have had access to this information before that are getting it. We need to do more of this. This is where we need to put our money. So in addition to continuing to give money to the children's hospitals, you might think of this as if you can do anything to reduce the likelihood that you or your family members will impose costs on the healthcare system that are completely avoidable. You want to look like these great former athletes do when you're their age. You ought to do that too. Because when you free that money up, you're making it possible for America's economy to grow better and for more of the miracles they bring every day at the Children's Hospital to occur. It's funny, you know, you reach a certain age in life, I mean, at least I do. My main passion in life, besides trying to live to be a grandfather, is just, I just don't want to see anybody younger than me die before their time. I had a good time in my life. And I was wildly fortunate, but I thought every day was a privilege. And to think of even one child being denied the universal gift of one more day that they should have had is something I really think about all the time now. And I think as you go older, things like that happen to you. So I thank you for doing this. I thank all of you for contributing and supporting it. I ask you to continue to contribute and support it. And remember, this is one place where bigger can be better, because there is irrefutable evidence that the more you do of anything, the better you get at it, and the more people get well. But I ask you also to help them by lightening the load that especially those of us in the baby boom generation are likely to put on our healthcare system. We don't even have to be more expensive, relatively speaking, than our parents. There are so many of us, if we just use the healthcare system and individually claim the same share of the healthcare dollar that our parents did, we're going to put a big burden on our children and their ability to raise our grandchildren and the ability of children's hospitals to be properly financed. So we need to give more and stay well. That's my simple request. Thanks again for having me and for all you do. Thank you.
And here to present the inaugural Joe DiMaggio American Icon Award to President Bill Clinton is John Carlisle, President and CEO of Sheridan Healthcare.
Yes, please welcome John Farmer to give the award, the first icon.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure.
By the way, how great, I just have to say this, Mr. President. Of course, you're still so connected to both Yale and Georgetown, but do you realize our president, in one sentence, used tertiary and nursery? You did. That was pretty good. So, hey, what a great night. Thank you. And please, John.
Thank you very much. On the behalf of all the people in the room, I would like to present President Bill Clinton with the American Icon Award, and I would personally like to thank him, and on behalf of everyone in the room, what an incredible human being, and what he's done for this world and made it a better place for all of us to live in. He's really a unique man. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's beautiful, John. Did I read that you went to UTI?
I did.
Did you know Don Barber, the president there?
Yeah.
He's the president of the
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you all for coming, and may this be our first of 56 straight. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you so much.